聴者の皆さん、本日は国際平和のための対話イベント UN75 in 広島をご覧いただきありがとうございます。Hello viewers, thank you very much for viewing the Global Peace Dialogue UN75 in Hiroshima today. 本日は同時通訳を行っていますので、はじめに通訳言語の切り替え方法の説明を簡単にさせていただきます。We have simultaneous interpretation for this event. I would now like to give you a brief explanation for switching interpretation languages. ではまず、パソコンで日本語を話される方の場合です。英語通訳が必要な日本語スピーカーの方は、まず左下にありますミュートボタンを押して発言するとき以外はこのミュートの状態でお願いいたします。そして右下にあります言語ボタンをクリックし、日本語を選んでください。そしてオリジナル音声をミュートにするをクリックしてください。そうすれば設定が完了となります。続いてスマートフォンの場合ですが、同じようにまず左下にありますミュートボタンを押していただきまして、発言するとき以外はミュートの状態でお願いいたします。そして右下にあります言語選択ボタンで日本語を選択してください。またオリジナル音声をミュートにするを選んでいただきまして設定が完了いたします。そして続いて For English speakers with computers, please click the language select button and select English, and then click mute the original sound. And please make sure that you set mute mode the whole time during the dialogue when you're not speaking. And next, for English speakers with smartphones, it's about the same thing, and click the language select button and select English, and click mute the original sound. And please select mute your microphone and unmute only when you talk. Okay. And setup is completed. そしてですね、質問がもしありましたら、Zoom のチャット機能を使って入力していただければ、このイベントの中でいくつか取り上げたいと思います。So if you have any questions related to today's dialogue, please enter the question in the Zoom chat box. We will answer some of these questions during the event. また参加者、視聴者の皆さんに開会の前に一つだけお願いがございます。今日の対話イベントの感想やご意見をぜひ SNS でハッシュタグ UN75 ハッシュタグ広島75をつけて発信していただき、この広島の地での軍縮と SDGs に向けた取り組みに関してより多くの人に関心を持ってもらいたいと考えています。ご協力よろしくお願いいたします。And before starting the opening ceremony, we would like to ask all the viewers and participants just one thing. We would be grateful if you could spread or disseminate your opinions and comments on today's event through SNS with hashtag UN75 or and hashtag Hiroshima75 so that many more people will get to know and become interested in the measures implemented here in Hiroshima toward disarmament and achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. We appreciate your cooperation. Thank you. Hello, everyone. We are so pleased to welcome you all to the Global Peace Dialogue UN75 in Hiroshima today. UN75 in Hiroshima is hosted by Hiroshima Prefecture with cooperation from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Hiroshima Peace Culture Foundation, and the United Nations Information Center, as well as with the support of the United Nations Institute for Training and Research. This year marks the 75th anniversary of the atomic bombing and the 75th anniversary of the establishment of the United Nations. To commemorate this year, the UN is encouraging people around the world to engage in dialogue about our future. We hope that UN75 in Hiroshima will serve as a good opportunity to consider disarmament and the related SDGs, especially in terms of their relationships, current situation, and ideal future vision. Together with you all, we would like to explore how disarmament can contribute to accomplish the SDGs and what we can do for a brighter future. By the way, I almost forgot to introduce myself. I'm sorry. I'm Rumi Burgel, your MC today. It's really great to be here. Very nice to meet you all. And now we would like to begin the opening ceremony for UN75 in Hiroshima. For this event, Secretary-General Guterres has prepared a video message for us. Secretary-General Guterres was firmly determined to come to Hiroshima in his belief that his visit would serve as a means to demonstrate strong measures in favor of nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation. However, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, he has regrettably had to cancel his plans to visit Hiroshima. We would like to share Secretary-General Guterres' determination for the abolishment of nuclear weapons and his expectations for UN75 in Hiroshima. So now, please watch this video.
I'm pleased to send greetings to this dialogue on UN75 in Hiroshima. This year marks 75 years since the United Nations were born from the ashes of the Second World War. It also makes 3/4 of a century since the atomic incineration of Hiroshima and Nagasaki heralded the advent of terrible new weapons that pose an existential threat to humanity. Since 1945, one of the United Nations' top priorities has been the elimination of nuclear weapons. It is clearly encapsulated in Article 26 of the Charter, which calls for minimizing the diversion for armaments of the world's human and economic resources. The founders did not want the world's limited resources to be spent on weapons, but on development. The 75th anniversary of the United Nations is an important opportunity for us to take stock and consider how the UN can enhance its efforts across the organization to achieve its shared goals of peace, human rights, and sustainable development. As we learn from the past, we have to look forward and take into account new threats, such as climate change and the disruption from new technologies. This is not just a discussion for national governments. It needs input from everyone, including youth, civil society, local governments, and the private sector. For our anniversary, I've asked people to join the world's biggest conversation on how we can collectively reinvigorate global cooperation for a better future for all. In settings such as these, we want to hear from you about your hopes and fears for the future and how to create a truly networked, inclusive, and effective multilateralism to better deliver on our aspirations. The ambition of the Sustainable Development Goals and the many global challenges that confront us require collective action by us all. As an international community, we have made great strides in seeking to fulfill the promise of the United Nations Charter. I commend Japan for its engagement across the United Nations agenda and its commitment to multilateralism, but still have much to achieve. Let us work together to create peace, prosperity, dignity, and opportunity for all people on a healthy planet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was the message from Secretary-General Guterres. And as you have noticed, Secretary-General Guterres is expecting a lot from UN 75 in Hiroshima. And as I mentioned earlier, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs supports this event. And at this point, we would like Director Sho Ono of the Arms Control and Disarmament Division of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to deliver an address on behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Director Ono, please.
Thank you very much. I will deliver my speech in Japanese. 75年前の今日、原子爆弾の犠牲となられた数多くの方々の御霊に対し、謹んで哀悼の意を表しますとともに、本日広島において国際平和について議論を行う皆様に対し、敬意を表します。新型コロナウイルス感染症の世界的な拡大は、我々の経済、社会、生活に深刻な影響を与えています。このような中、人間の安全保障の理念に基づき、誰一人取り残さないという考えのもと、社会、経済、環境を統合的な視点で捉え、中長期的に問題解決を図る SDGs の考え方が改めて注目されています。広島県は2018年に SDGs 未来都市の一つとして選出されました。原子爆弾により焦土と化した広島は復興・発展を遂げ、核兵器のない世界の実現、そして SDGs の達成に向けた平和の活動を世界中に発信しています。本日ここで行われる議論も SDGs の取り組みの進展に貢献するものと確信しております。グテーレス国連事務総長による軍縮アジェンダは幅広い軍縮の課題を統合的な視点で捉え、人類の未来を守るための力強いメッセージを打ち出しました。我が国としてもグテーレス国連事務総長、そして中満国連事務次長をはじめとする国連と連携しながら、軍縮に向けた取り組みを引き続き積極的に進めてまいります。SDGs の目標16では、違法な武器取引の減少や組織犯罪の根絶が掲げられていますが、国際社会が連携して不法取引対策を行い、武器の回収や管理に取り組むことで、人々の命を助けることができます。先般、国連では小型武器対策のための新たな基金が立ち上げられ、日本はいち早くそのサポーターとして名乗りを上げ、2億2000万円をすでに拠出しました。日本は今後とも小型武器問題にも積極的に取り組んでまいります。被爆から75年を迎える今日、創設75周年を迎える国連と連携して、広島で行われる議論が、被爆者の皆様のご尽力によって受け継がれてきた平和のメッセージを、世代と国境を越えてつなぎ、多くの人々に平和の声を届けるものとなることを期待しております。ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much. And next, we would like to hear from Chairperson Takashi Koizumi of the Hiroshima Peace Cultural Foundation. Mr. Koizumi, please.
Good afternoon. Hello, everyone. And how are you doing? Okay. I'm Takashi Koizumi, chairperson of Hiroshima Peace Culture Foundation. Thank you for inviting me today to UN75 in Hiroshima, hosted by Hiroshima Prefecture. It is a great pleasure and honor for me to offer a few words on this occasion. Understand that this event, UN75 in Hiroshima, commemorates the 75th anniversary of the establishment of the United Nations in unity with UN's efforts to promote future-oriented dialogue among people around the world. It's very meaningful that this event is held in the presence of Ms. Izumi NAKAMITSU, UN Under Secretary-General and High Representative for Disarmament Affairs. I would like to express my deepest respect for the people involved in this organization, in this event. Mayors for Peace, in which I serve as Secretary General, has two sets major objectives in pursuing the realization of everlasting world peace. That is the realization of a world without nuclear weapons and realization of a safe and resilient cities. Together with over 7,900 member cities in 164 countries and regions, Mayors for Peace is working to achieve these objectives. In order to realize safe and resilient cities, we collaborate with member cities in addressing various problems which threaten peace in cities, such as terrorism, discrimination, violence, and others. This objective is exactly what the UN Sustainable Development Goals aim to achieve. In this regard, I deeply support the purpose of this event, which encourages people to think together about how we can create a future based on the current status of disarmament and the SDGs. In a democratic civil society, there are opportunities for people to change the world. If there are more people in civil society who appreciate the value of peace, think what they can do to maintain peace, and take action in their daily lives to uphold peace, then they can be the momentum to drive change. I sincerely hope that through joining this event, all of you in attendance here will think about what we can do for the realization for everlasting world peace, put this into practice, and adopt a global mindset in your future endeavors. In closing, I express my best wishes for the success of this event and the continued good health of all attendants and every success in their future endeavors. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And with that, we would like to conclude the opening ceremony. And we are sorry to inform you that Director Ono and Chairperson Koizumi need to leave for their next appointments. Director Ono and Chairperson Koizumi, thank you so much for your attendance today. All right, we would now like to start the dialogue, and I'd like to pass the MC baton to the moderator, Professor Nobumasa Akiyama of Hitotsubashi University now. So Professor Akiyama, it's all yours.
Should we start? Okay, so thank you very much. My name is Nobu Akiyama. I'm a professor at Hitotsubashi University teaching international security. So today I'm honored to sort of moderate this very interesting session. And the topic of the session is how we link the nuclear disarmament with SDGs. I think the details of the discussion will be, probably very important for advancing on both sides, promoting nuclear disarmament and achieving the SDGs. And I'm really looking forward to listen to the innovative ideas of the members of this panel. So I would like to welcome all of you who successfully, presented in earlier in the process of choosing the membership. And then, I really enjoyed reading your presentations and your ideas. So, this is a great opportunity for you to introduce your idea to Izumi Nakamitsu and the Secretary-General of the United Nations. So, I keep on hearing from Izumi that she would like to listen to you instead of she is talking to you. So, this is a great opportunity. And I also would like to thank Governor Hidehiko Yuzaki and Hiroshima Prefecture to provide us with this great opportunity to exchange the opinions. And this is a very new idea, and so I understand how much the Governor Yuzaki and people in Hiroshima Prefecture government are moving forward and enthusiastic in promoting the sort of new thinking in nuclear disarmament. Of course, I'm not in a position to speak, give a lecture, so I would like to maybe first ask Izumi for brief remarks on how she thinks about the linkage between nuclear disarmament and SDGs.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I'm not so used to this face shield. This is the first time I ever wear it. Good afternoon, and so nice to meet you. I'm very, very looking forward to listen to you, what you think as the priority for your future. Before getting into the link between disarmament and SDGs, just let me add a few words to the Secretary General's words on what it is that we're trying to achieve in the UN75 initiative. This is the world's biggest dialogue process, and the importance is there are two very important elements. This is a dialogue that goes beyond governments. As you know, the United Nations is an intergovernmental organization. But we are really strongly feeling nowadays that the new multilateralism really is about multi-stakeholder. He used the word inclusive multilateralism. So this process is all about listening to people who are actually, concerned about the future of this planet, who have things to say about the future of this planet, like yourselves. The second is that it is forward-looking. We want to know from you what you think will be the priority for the next 25 years. So, of course, it is very important that we build our agenda on the basis of the lessons from our history, and therefore the stories and messages from Hibakusha in Hiroshima and Nagasaki are hugely important. But we also want to learn from that and then look towards the future, the next 25 years. Now, there are 7 key areas in this dialogue. The first one, and then many of them actually are closely related to disarmament, all of them very much related to, obviously, SDGs. The first one, the impact of digital technologies. The second, new era of conflict and violence. It's shifting again, return of a Cold War-like great power competitions, in addition to very complicated regional internal conflicts, and of course, threats of terrorism, etc. Climate change, of course, this is something that is one of the existential threats to humankind, along with the threat and risk of nuclear weapons. And another one, inequality. How can we change the situation when it comes to inequality and disparity? And investing in health for equitable future. Obviously, in the COVID-19 pandemic, this is something that we are feeling every day as a top priority. Shifting demographic also. People also are moving across borders. And then finally, something that is very close to my heart, I'm sure to all of you, women and girls, closing the gender gap. You can see that many of those agenda areas are very closely related to both disarmament and SDGs. Director Ono mentioned the Secretary General's agenda for disarmament. This agenda for disarmament was our first efforts to bring disarmament out of technical silos, and connect it with a broader agenda and priority of the United Nations, and made close link with various aspects of the SDGs. This is something that was a little bit difficult for disarmament experts, because it was always something about how to regulate technical aspects of armaments, etc. But we wanted to take a look at the broader perspectives when it comes to disarmament, because we know that disarmament efforts actually can really contribute, speed up, accelerate the implementation of almost all of SDG targets and goals. My final word, collective action. What we need to do in the UN75 efforts definitely has to be that we intensify our message. Global challenges require global and collective actions. So we need to be focused on what we can achieve, results-oriented. Actually, can I add one final word? I work for the United Nations, which was created 75 years ago. But the original idea came from two visionary leaders at the time. That's, of course, Roosevelt and Churchill, US and UK. And it was already discussed and you know, the vision put forward when the World War II was going on. So it was very much a top-down initiative in order to create international order after the World War II. I think looking at actually what Me Too movement, Fridays for Future movements, and now Black Lives Matter. You know, living in New York and observing my own two daughters actually be part of many of those movements, I feel that today, if you want to change the world, it has to be bottom up. These three movements are starting to create such an enormous energy, and the voices requesting or demanding changes are now reaching policymakers and the leadership. I think today's important element or essence of leadership is to enable young people to be able to contribute, to be able to innovate, take creative approaches, organize, connect with each other, share experiences, and therefore you can create that energy. So I'm here to receive the energy, and I would very much like to bring that energy and ideas back to New York when I go back. So I'm looking forward today. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. So Governor Izaki, if you have words.
Well, thank you very much. Welcome you all to this UN75 session. This is a really privileged session with the presence of Under Secretary-General Izumi Nakamitsu. And it's only, well, this opportunity came because of this August 6th Memorial Day. And it marks 75th year of the atomic bombing. And as Nakamitsu-san presented, the future of the planet Earth really depends on you, how you act, the young people, and the things are changing very quickly, including this pandemic of COVID-19, and of course other risks, which includes the nuclear weapons and conflicts between countries. And all the, you know, SDGs goals heads toward a peace. And peace is also a goal. And also peace is a platform for everything else. So it makes a kind of circular move. So I hope you will say what you can. I hope you will be able to make your statement sufficiently. So the message will be delivered to Ms. Nakamitsu and to Secretary-General Guterres, and then that will lead to the changing the world too. So thank you very much. I'm looking forward to your comments.
Thank you very much. So now let's start a discussion. And I would like to propose one rule. Why don't we call ourselves each other by first name? So like even governor is a Hide, and Nakamitsu Izumi, so that we can facilitate the discussion. Secondly, so in order to make the time, in order to use the time effectively, I would like to propose maybe 4 sections in discussion. So 4 topics, in other words. I read your proposals and found so many interesting ideas and thoughts. So probably it's very difficult to cover everything. So I, kind of picked up 4 interesting fields. One is the advocacy. Because we are now in Hiroshima, it's most appropriate to address the power of stories, Hiroshima Hibakusha, and how storytellers kind of disseminate the idea of nuclear disarmament. And the second is a nuclear disarmament education, right? How we should teach the disarmament, and how are we going to collaborate with communities, and how academicians, think tank sectors should work on this important topic. And third is inclusiveness through social media and the technology, right? Of course, technology could be disruptive and could be used to undermine the peace. But at the same time, we should learn and we should think how we're going to effectively utilize the technologies, including social media, so that we can share a lot of good ideas among ourselves. And finally, how we are going to bridge nuclear disarmament or disarmament in general with the social and economic issues. And then some of them picked up the issue of gender and inequality in society, right? If we are not able to achieve the sort of equality or prosperity in society, we are not able to eradicate the cause of war. So I sort of picked up these 4 issues, and I asked each of you to address those questions. So for the first topic on advocacy, I would like to ask Kaya, Mary, and Reiko to give us kind of lead off discussions. So Kaya, you have a floor.
Okay, hello, my name is Kaya. I'm very honored to be here today. So let me start by talking about my proposal. So on the 14th of November, 2019, I turned 28. So now you know how old I am. On this day, I not only celebrated my birthday, I was also in the Republic of Cyprus, interpreting the testimony of an atomic bomb survivor from Hiroshima in front of Cypriot authorities. We were encouraging them to ratify the United Nations Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. It was the most memorable birthday of my life. I went there with Peace Boat, a Japan-based NGO in special consultative status with UN ECOSOC that runs the Hibakusha project, an initiative that takes atomic bomb survivors from Hiroshima and Nagasaki to governments around the world to testify about their experiences of exposure to the atomic bomb. You can see the picture of Peace Boat on the top right. So what did I learn there in Cyprus? I learned that people care about peace. When the atomic bomb survivor interpreted spoke of the black rain that she was exposed to and the dying people she saw with their skin dangling off their bodies, the Cypriot authorities were smitten. One of them, whose mother was a survivor of the Holocaust, hugged the atomic bomb survivor and said, "I understand your sorrow because my family was a war victim too." However, despite the strong feelings we were able to convey, Cyprus has not yet ratified the treaty. There seems to be a gap between people's feelings and their policies. Here we have an example where people's personal feelings do not reflect what they do in real life. To close this gap, it is necessary to have an incentive for joining peace movements, such as ratifying the United Nations Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. I personally think that it would be a great idea for the United Nations to put forth a treaty on the prohibition of gun ownership as well. Incentives are effective because they provide advantages to participants. For instance, ratification of a UN treaty could be exchanged for support in the form of goods, know-how, or human resources. The UN is an organization that has all its member states at its disposal. If we could take those member states' strengths and have them contribute to the UN, they could create incentives that encourage more countries to sign the UN's treaties. Take Japan, for example. What does Japan need now? It needs a realistic plan to start making renewable energy resources. The UN could offer Japan free human resources, such as experts in the field of renewable energy, in exchange for Japan's ratification of the treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons. Politics is a process of give and take, and such healthy exchanges could lead to a brighter future of international cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's interesting. So now, Mary, you have a floor.
Thank you so much, everyone. My name is Mary, and I am co-founder and business director of Peace Culture Village, which is a peace education nonprofit incorporated here in Hiroshima. PCV is a bilingual team of Japanese and non-Japanese young professionals who have dedicated our careers to studying and practicing Hiroshima-style peace education. So what PCV is really all about is raising human consciousness through peace education that's based on the story and message of Hiroshima. So if we want to create a world where the SDGs are realized, a disarmed world, then education is going to be key. And so even if we eliminate nuclear weapons, if human beings don't learn to relate to each other openly, honestly, intimately, in the pursuit of universal well-being, then we will just continue to find ways to destroy each other and ourselves. And so as you can see from the slide I provided here, we have a lot of different programs. We do school field trips. We do programs for foreign groups of students and teachers who come to Hiroshima. We do daily tours of Hiroshima Peace Park in Japanese and English every day from the rest house. With coronavirus, many of these programs were canceled and not as many people came as we thought. So the team of mostly young foreign folks and third generation bomb survivors, we gathered at Tully's and we thought, okay, how are we going to continue to do our mission? How are we going to continue to share the stories of the bomb survivors that have changed our lives and made us passionate about this issue? And so what I want to focus on is the picture you see in the middle there of the children looking at the map. So today, August 6, 2020, Peace Culture Village is proud to announce that we are launching our Peace Portal. And what Peace Portal is it's a platform that uses CG, AI, AR, and VR, and Google Earth technology to provide Hiroshima-based learning opportunities to people from around the world who would never be able to visit Hiroshima. Maybe even without coronavirus, maybe would never be able to come. And so I would encourage you all, one of the programs in our Peace Portal is our Explore Hiroshima app. That's Explore Hiroshima. You can go onto the App Store right now and download it for free. And with that app, you can actually guide yourself through Hiroshima Peace Park in augmented reality. We also do live guided tours of Hiroshima Peace Park facilitated by young people like myself using Google Earth technology. We're also working with an American company called Time Looper to provide virtual field trips to students all over the world. And actually, General Secretary Guterres said a few days ago that over 1 billion children have had their education disrupted by the coronavirus. So we are really hoping to, because of the situation now, we want to take advantage of this time to spread the message of Hiroshima around the world. And I myself am a huge gamer. I love video games. So it's my dream to actually use gaming technology to teach about peace culture and to bolster the message of Hiroshima. The possibilities are endless. We could use this app to ride on the streetcar through Nakajima district in virtual reality. We could have people enter homes in virtual reality in Nakajima and talk to holograms of atomic bomb survivors. So I think the possibilities here are endless, and I'm really looking forward to hearing the rest of everyone's proposals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, great. Reiko?
Okay. Thank you for this opportunity. In the agenda for disarmament in 2018, United Nations Secretary-General António Guterres says more education opportunities should be established in order to empower young people to be a force for change and disarmament. As a second-generation hibakusha and a trainer for high school exchange program, I propose two key elements for educating young global citizens: the power of stories and cultural perspectives. And since my time is limited to 3 minutes, I'm gonna cut the cultural perspective and focus on the power of stories. Okay. My mother survived the atomic bomb when she was 6 years old. When she turned 70, she started to tell her story for the first time. Whether Americans or Portuguese or Koreans, personal stories have this power to transcend borders, to move us, to touch our heart and open our minds. In May 2010, my mother was invited to tell her story at a high school in New York. At the end of the story, a Palestinian boy who had emigrated to the US enthusiastically raised his hand to ask a question. Mrs. Tanaka, you said you had forgiven Americans, but I don't understand why. You were severely burned and nearly killed. How could you possibly forgive people who did this to you? And my mother replied in a quiet voice, in the beginning, I did harbor deep bitterness toward the Americans, but one day I realized that this attitude was pointless because hate only breeds more hate. And this vicious cycle, vicious chain of hatred will eventually lead us to war. And if you eventually, then somebody has to cut this chain. The boy said he was confused, but he conceded that it's another way of thinking. Yeah, as you see, the boys, the members of his family had been killed by Israeli attacks, and it seemed that the young man had been well under down to the road to a quest for revenge. But the following year, my mother received wonderful news. The angry youth was a new person. He learned to become forgiving and tolerant. So this is the power of stories. And this is why I believe people-to-people interactions, not the nuclear weapons, are the best deterrent to conflicts. With hibakushas aging, we must make sure to digitally record their stories so that they are preserved for everyone. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you for excellent three presentations. So we recognize the importance of how we kind of share the experiences and probably common vision. And also we would like to be sort of repeated reminded how important the dignity and commitment to the nuclear disarmament should be. I maybe would like to ask at this moment, Izumi, for your comment, and then, of course, you have many opinions, so I would like to also invite the floor, the people from the floors after that.
Thank you, Nobu, and thank you so much for the three very interesting, very valuable contributions. I absolutely agree that individual stories really carry such a tremendous power because they move people. It goes directly into the hearts of people. If I can share a little bit of my own personal story, I always say I've been with the UN for almost 30 years, and I've done very different things. But I still today, the most difficult job I had was the very first job I had. I started in UNHCR, United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. And as a legal officer, my first job was to interview every single asylum seekers who would come to the doorsteps of UNHCR office in Ankara, Turkey, asking for refugee status recognition. Why was it difficult? Because if I make a mistake and say, no, your story is not credible, you're not a refugee, it will have a tremendous impact on that individual's life. So that kind of a human-to-human story is a huge responsibility. It's a big also power that you can actually have. In conflict zones, war zones, I also met with incredible individuals who, in the midst of war, had tremendous courage. The brave actions that they took as individual citizens really changed different people's lives. I always pay a tremendous respect to Mrs. Setsuko Thorough. She makes always such a wonderful speeches. She did so at the Nobel Peace Prize Award in Oslo as well, but I can't forget what she said at the adoption of Treaty on Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, TPNW, in July of 2017. She said that every single victim who perished in atomic bomb 75 years ago now was loved by someone, and they loved someone. They all had faces and names and stories. And I think individual memories, remembering human faces of all these numbers that we tend to look at is a force in itself. So I would very much like you to remember those passion that you have today, because you remember the individual stories. Never let yourself, when you start your career in your respective fields, when you become an important person and start to look at big issues, those things tend to become part of numbers and figures. Don't let that happen. Always try to remember the individual stories, because that is a force in itself, force for change. I want to, however, maybe in the education part, how you link that individual force with, making it sort of into the level of policy changes. I think there is the issue of knowledge, skills, etc. But I will touch on that in the second section.
Great, thank you very much. As a student of international security, I have to rethink or to think twice about how the big story of national security should considerate about the story of individuals, how individual lives matters in the national security as well. Although now time is very limited, but if you'd like to say something about this topic, please raise your hand. Anybody who want to start? No? So then, Hide, that's your turn.
Well, I also agree with the importance of individual stories and experiences, and we tend to think, as Izumi said, in terms of numbers when we talk about how horrible nuclear weapons are, but everything is based on the individuals, and SDGs all relates to the security of human being. And Nobu said, we talk about security of nations, but actually all relates to security of individual human being. And when we think of that, the engagement of individual is very important. And so those stories is really important. And also the education or learning of individual and empowerment of individual is really important. And I also thought Mary's presentation, this digital technology will open up a completely new kind of horizon of telling stories of Hiroshima to the world. And that is, we learned that through this COVID-19 too, digital technology is pretty useful with communicating with people in remote places. And digital native generations like Mary and people here, I hope would work on this topic and find effective ways to deliver messages from Hiroshima to the world, and that has a huge impact. We receive about 2 million. We used to receive. I mean, now with the COVID, it's a little bit different. But we used to receive about 2 million foreign guests in Hiroshima. But we can, we can communicate with like tens of millions of people with digital technology. So I would like to look forward to the new developments in that area.
Thank you. Anybody? Actually, yes. Let me propose this. Because of time constraints, let me move on to the next topic. Then we combine a discussion. If you have, I see somebody raise your hand, but maybe, and then if you could speak at the next occasion for the discussion, that would be great. Are you okay? Satoshi, I think, yeah. Okay, great. So now, next I would like to invite Ankita and also Kento and Satoshi on nuclear disarmament education.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Ankita. So to begin with the question of war, I was always concerned about it since my childhood, as I belong to the family of refugees who were forced to migrate from Pakistan to India after the horrors of war. And I didn't pay much attention to the bombing of at Japan by America, as firstly, it did not happen in my country. And secondly, I read only 2 paragraphs about it in my world history subject in junior high school, just for the sake of the examination. I got the real picture of the atrocities of nuclear war on my visit to Nagasaki this year in February, and by actually interacting with hibakushas and visiting the museum. So before I begin, you can actually begin the actual solution. I want to draw your attention towards the slides. And if you see, the first bomb was like the red one. It was dropped on Hiroshima, and it created destruction of around 20,000 feet in 45 seconds, leading to the death of 140,000 people. However, SAR bomb, the biggest one, has the capacity to create the destruction of 200,000 feet. It is 4,000 times stronger than the bomb dropped at Hiroshima, leading to a possible death rate of more than 500 million people. So coming to my solutions on disarmament education first. So disarmament education and peace education at very school level, following the peace study and disarmament study system of Hiroshima and Nagasaki city across Japan, and then furthering it to the world. Taking the voices of hibakushas to schools, universities, and civil society by giving them first-hand experience through videos, live sessions, online chats, etc. Because according to me, collaborations are most important. Until I heard the experience of Mr. Yamawaki from Nagasaki, I didn't feel as connected to the issue as I feel about it today. And this solution is based on my own personal experience, because next 25 years, hibakushas will not be there. So who will be the one to take it forward? So next is youth-led movement. So the biggest example is Greta Thunberg. Her passion has led every single individual to think about climate change and take action. Likewise, if few people are identified by such conferences every year and further trained literally with facts, and the movement of abolishing of nuclear weapons can go down to every single individual, leaving nobody behind. Then promoting dialogue through stakeholders. So, so disarmament process would be an opportunity for us to promote dialogue amongst various stakeholders to envision the future we want. Disarmament cannot merely be achieved through intergovernmental agreements and negotiation only, but also requires involvement of civil society and establishment of culture of peace. So I believe it is not civil society against civil society. It is not army against army. It is, I think, mindset against mindset. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So next, Kento.
Sorry, my mic was off, sorry. So as Ms. Nakamitsu and Mr. Yuzaki mentioned earlier, I also believe in the power of youth and think that action of youth has a potential of positive changes at a national and global level. However, when I, a 21-year-old Hiroshima citizen, look around, I only see a handful of youth that are actively speaking up and making actions for disarmament. So therefore, in order to have a big step towards achieving disarmament and SDGs, and for that matter, for solving any other social issues, I believe that internalization is the key. We will not be able to solve a social issue fundamentally unless the general public regards the issue as something that actually matters to themselves, something that they would personally care a lot about. As long as we're considering SDGs and disarmament as somebody else's problem, we're never going to solve those issues. So what can we do about this? I would propose to form a group of young individuals from across the globe that are interested in making concrete actions towards disarmament, which I would call Young Disarmament Leaders, or YDLs. These individual YDLs would form a caravan in their home countries and visit as many kindergartens, elementary, middle, and high schools as possible. And this action should simultaneously be undertaken globally by those YDLs. This is where internalization comes in. The aim here is not only to inform peoples of the facts about conflicts and wars, but also to get interested in as many countries as possible in the first place. We're able to internalize things only when we have a personal connection or attachment to them. Hence, YDLs need to provide local students with opportunities to interact with their counterparts in other countries and get to know about them, their life, their custom, and their perspectives, so that when they come across news about other countries, they can feel personal connection. YDLs would then inform peoples about the current situation of conflicts across the globe, and the material content will of course be altered depending on the grade of the pupils. Finally, students would then discuss what they can do as individuals towards disarmament. In order to have quality workshops, the YDLs leading them of course need to be extremely knowledgeable about the topic and be acquainted with necessary skills to lead those workshops. YDLs must keep updating their knowledge on the situation surrounding the issues discussed at the United Nations and how they're discussed there. Building attachment, becoming informed of the issue, and discussing what to do. I'm sure this three-step workshop led by highly educated and skillful YDLs with the help of the United Nations will be a huge step towards disarmament. This three-pillar project led by YDLs will cultivate resource for youth with an ability to internalize global issues. These bright young individuals will surely lead us on our path not only to disarmament, but also to achieving SDGs and other critical global issues. Thus, companies, NGO NPOs, and municipal, as well as national governments, are all to invest on and collaborate with these competent and young, ingenious minds. Even though the power of youth is immeasurable, if publicly well-known companies collectively stand up, that will be a decisive push for greater scale actions and makes the movement more sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sorry. Next, sorry, Satoshi.
Yeah. Thank you for the organizations of this event. So the point I want to highlight is that education is not only for students or happen in school. Everyone, including government leaders, think tank researchers, benefits from being educated on the lived experiences of Hiroshima. And I think my proposal is education that enhances civic engagement advocacy, and as well as the government's responsiveness to these engagements. So what I want to propose is a collaboration between think tank, civil society, academic institution in pursuit of better pressure and more convincing counter proposal on military spending reductions and how to transfer resources from the spending on arms to the SDG-related goals. So what's the issue identification here? So I believe that the link between SDG and disarmament is clear and well theorized, but not widely understood between the Japanese public and leveraged for policy advocacy. As a result, we tend to think national security as a sanctity immune to some sort of evidence-based criticism or the scrutiny from the civil sector, and there are often governments who end up unitary rational or bridging gaps or without clarifying what specifically that means in practice and what kinds of policy options are on the table. So what we think we need is as the example COVID-19 demonstrated, we need to create an alternative intellectual community, something like a epistemic community comprised of researchers or civil leaders who can actually create a realistic proposal for nuclear disarmament and offer that to governments so that they can have more constructive discussions, and governments are required to be more accountable, responsive, and transparent on what's going to happen in terms of disarmament. So specifically, we think the city that has connection to nuclear disarmament, like for example, like Hiroshima or Nagasaki, can invite think tank researchers like policy analysts or people who are knowledgeable about policy but not necessarily affiliated with governments to Hiroshima and give them exposure to the lived experiences of Hiroshima and make a forum for discussion between those experts and the young civil activists in Hiroshima or across Japan, so that not only those policy experts benefit from lived experiences of Hiroshima's hibakusha and the reality of the bombing, those young people also gain important knowledges about what's the latest research about military spending and what's the reality of geopolitical complexity, that those information that would otherwise only be accessible to government leaders. So what's the efficacy here? I think the first efficacy is a more facilitated advocacy in the sense that those policy researchers in Japan or abroad can mainstream human-oriented disarmament perspective into their proposals. And also civil society, when they making claim about proposal for nuclear disarmament, they can be more realistic and put a more comprehensive proposal on the table as a response to governments. And third of all, governments will be the government will be put in a position where they have to be more accountable and transparent to the needs of civil society, because they have to prove their legitimacy of the policy in discussion. And we also think this is effective in terms of education as well, because for the Japanese public, this is the first opportunity to think of peace as not like a past issue, but a relevant policy issue where you can vote for the versions of the active peace that you can believe in, that you can organize with a civil society group who has specific proposal that could be implemented in national parliament. So we think these are the measures that I've been proposing, the close connection between think tank, academic institutions, and civil society in pursuit of a new intellectual community for nuclear disarmament. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So a lot of ideas, right? So, the importance of cultural context and also what's internalization, how people come to perceive this issue as their own problem rather than others. And also, I like the idea of evidence-based sort of policy making, how we have a kind of rational scientific evidence to provide the importance of dealing with the nuclear disarmament. And that should be linked with this advocacy based upon the personal history and experiences as well. So Izumi, can you give a very brief comments so that everybody can speak as well?
Yes. No, this is really excellent. I agree with you all. So we had this passion from the previous discussions, the personal stories, individual stories, and all of that. Now we need to combine that with knowledge and skills. If you really want to be successful, as you said, we have to be able to construct realistic arguments. We need to be convincing. We need to understand the incentive structures why the counterpart, those who are absolutely in the, for example, nuclear deterrence theory, will be able to listen to what you are going to propose. So you need to in order for you to be able to do that, you have to have a knowledge. You need to know how international law works, how to negotiate norms and legal structures, how military doctrines are constructed. You need to have also a degree of a technical knowledge about how defense and national security issues actually are structured. So equip yourself with all sorts of knowledge. Never close the door just because you believe in more peaceful or disarmament path. It doesn't mean that you should not learn about military theories. Quite the contrary, you need to understand how other people look at defense. The slogan of SDGs, as you know, is leave no one behind. In order for us to be able to really integrate personal perspectives, individual perspectives into security doctrine, that's what you need to do. You have to understand the incentive structures. Now, I believe that there will be soon a moment of opportunity, a small window of opportunity opening up because of the COVID-19 pandemic. There will be soon moments where a lot of governments will not be able to afford spending millions of dollars into armament. That's an opportunity that we have to grab. And I mean, you don't remember because you were not born, but the reason why the previous Cold War really ended was that economic factor. Soviet Union in particular was not able to afford investing so much money. And then the United States also responded. So let us try to arm ourselves with knowledge and skills so that we will be able to present realistic, achievable, good alternative policies.
Thank you. I think the relationship between economy and the disarmament is the topic which is relatively underexplored. I think this is a great opportunity for young people to study more on this topic and become a kind of a leading figure in this issue as well. And I think Reiko, Yuriko, you have some, the comment that you raised in the previous session.
Well, yes, concerning what Izumi, if I may, said right now, I think the topic about constructing realistic arguments. Well, personally, I'm in a bukatsu right now, and I think that through that experience, I really strongly feel that like one-to-one communication is the best way to understand not only what the other person thinks, but what you think as well. And then I think that kind of face-to-face conversation is really lacking these days because people put an emphasis on SNS. They just tweet, they use Line, they use Instagram, and then it is a really convenient way to communicate. But those kind of communication tools are actually decreasing the number of time that we have face-to-face conversations. And that kind of conversation with your friends, like your family, I think it's the best way to understand that what other people think about, well, you, and it's the best way to shape your own feelings and then shape your own character as well. So to add on to what Izumi said about constructing realistic arguments, I think that people should put more emphasis on face-to-face conversations, which are really lacking in today's world right now. Thank you.
Thank you. So anybody would like to add anything? Don't be shy. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you very much. this is going to be a bit more of a personal experience, but I was, doing some sort of activities to advocate disarmament in Tokyo and around my place. But one day I had a chance to interact with actual government officials and people who were, law experts. And they told me that those activities that you are doing don't have much meaning in the real society. And that was actually quite a shock to me. I was not aware of anything that's happening in the real world. But after that, I actually gained chances to learn the actual, structures of how the United Nations and the other initiatives in the world are trying to realize this goal that seems too broad and too difficult to actually achieve. So yeah, this is kind of like a supportment to the opinions that all of you just mentioned earlier. I think that this interaction with youth and activists with professionals is a really important thing that we must put more emphasis on. Thank you.
Right, thank you. So maybe one more? No? Don't be shy. Right, so Satoshi? Yeah.
Yeah, I think what's important is that connecting those energies on the civil side with the actual policy making. And I think we can learn from the other countries' structures of policy making in which there are like think tanks, which actually has a capacity to influence policymakers. And I think by appealing to those sector within the broader policymaking community, by encouraging them to visit Hiroshima and mainstreaming the lived experience of disaster in its center of its proposal, I think that's one of the many ways available to actually affect changes or change the thinking of the people that who actually end up crafting policies or communicate, like choosing whether or not to adopt the treaty or not.
Thank you. So Hide, you have any comments? And then after Hide, the Izumi maybe few.
When you want to make actual changes, you need power, and power actually consists of legitimacy and also authority. And the knowledge contributes to authority, and legitimacy is like being in the position of Izumi. But that is not all. That is not all. So we need to at least those who are not in the legitimate position of changing the policy, for example, if you want to actually change the law, you need to be like a Diet member in Japan, or drafting laws as a bureaucrat. But with authority, you can influence those in a legitimate position to change the policy. And sometimes those in position of legitimacy have a kind of face of expert, but not necessarily know much. So, I hope you will learn a lot. And also, the point I think Kento was making, like internalization, that is really important. That leads to engagement. And recently, OECD is putting more importance on agency in education. Agency really means autonomy or engagement or self-discipline. It's a little bit difficult to explain. I mean, it's a difficult notion, but agency is now trying. Now the countries are trying to trying to have young people learn or acquire agency, and that will lead to engagement and then internalization, and then that leads to, I think, to having authority in issues, and that will give you power to change the world, I think.
Thank you. Izumi, you have any response to the comments?
Well, never be discouraged if an adult person says what you're doing doesn't matter. Just laugh at those adults, I would suggest. I mean, if you remember, a very good example of that is Greta Thunberg's Friday for Future. She started to sit outside the Swedish parliament every Friday alone, and everyone was first laughing at her. And look at what happened just several months later. If anyone, adult, says that it doesn't matter what you say or what you do, that adult is wrong. The world always changed because of concerned individuals. So never be discouraged. That's message number one. But you also have to be always willing to learn and grow. Never stay in one place, never stop listening to others. The world has so many different views and perspectives, good ideas, and then good policies always born from different ideas come together, discuss, and then find common grounds, and then it actually goes up to the level of changes, reforms, new policies. So I think it's, and then, in that process, engagement, agency, all these things are critical. And that in itself requires your own actions. So, I'm an optimist. You can always be engaged. You can acquire the necessary knowledge and skills and agency. And you will really be part of that change. In fact, you will be leading the change.
Thank you very much. So far we have discussed the, very kind of authentic topics which we discuss in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Now we'd like to move on to a little bit a new topic in this field, that is how we are going to effectively utilize social media and, what will be the impact of technology in the discourse and shaping the idea of nuclear disarmament. So now Amy, Canon, and Yuriko, you lead the discussion. Thank you. Amy.
Hello, my name is Amy Kamepu, and I attend Hiroshima International School, and I'm a high school senior living in Hiroshima. My proposition to disarmament is simply social media. The use of social media can be employed by 2 SDGs as presented on the slide. I believe by applying Goal 17, global partnerships, and Goal 16, promoting peaceful and sustainable development can be achieved through social media. Social media is used by approximately half of the world's population, according to the We Are Special Digital 2020 reports. And it is not just a place to post a selfie or post what you ate for lunch anymore. It is a perfect, simple, and effective way to bring the spotlight to global issues. But I have not seen any action being done towards disarmament through social media. This has been evidently shown through the recent Black Lives Matter movement, when a tragic death occurred due to police brutality in the US. The repercussions were felt all over the world and was spread through social media instantly, as social media doesn't allow tragedies to occur unnoticed. Everybody continues to repost information as, for example, what's going on in the world right now, or what you can do to help, and signing petitions to spread awareness. Even if you're not directly affected by a situation, sources to educate themselves are also available to contribute to these pivotal moments. I think taking the same approach by providing information about disarmament through social media can easily make a change to inform everyone around the world the urgency of the topic at hand. The difference between the BLO movement and disarmament is the sense of urgency. No one believes that they will be a victim of a nuclear attack. The use of weapons is a topic that cannot be brought attention after a tragic death or casualties around the world, as it is much more powerful tool that can kill out countless people in a matter of seconds. Yes, there are more immediate actions that should be taking place for some of the issues at the moment, but that does not mean that no other global issues are urgent. By creating partnerships for these SDG goals, as Goal 17 suggests, through social media, many people can share a photo or information to take action, which could easily create partnerships. Social media is such a powerful tool that I think can bring actors together. People who live in countries who hold weapons may feel more urgency than those who live in safer countries with no comprehension of the seriousness and can be educated through these posts as well. Simultaneously, this will tackle Goal 16 of peace, justice, and strong institutions. Sharing information or the history of weapons through social media or my experience by attending the Hiroshima Junior International Forum or the gathering that we have here today, we will be promoting peace to build effective and accountable opinions. This will not only educate people on social media, but they will have the responsibility to take action and spread the importance of disarmament. After 75 years of fighting against conventional and nuclear weapons, now 2020 is the most promising year to make a change and go forward into the direction towards disarmament like today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Canon?
Hello, my name is Canon and I'm in the second year of high school. So today, I'd like to focus on concrete measures the United Nations can take to accelerate youth engagement in disarmament. So my opinions will be based on the belief that raising awareness among citizens is in the end the most important thing to find a solution to these global goals and global issues. Okay, so first, providing a collective platform for e-courses. So I've noticed that currently many organizations in the UN, such as UNODA, UNITAR, and UNICEF, are providing online-based educational courses. And they're really amazing. I use them. And however, I've noticed that they're doing that on each distinct portal. So UNICEF has UNICEF's portal and so on. So in order to access the courses you want, you have to access that one portal, and that makes these courses really difficult to reach. So I thought that providing a collective platform for e-courses, UN-provided e-courses, or perhaps even cooperating with pre-existing courses platforms outside, such as Coursera and edX, may be a good solution. So second, inclusivity to younger generations. The UN already provides a myriad of wonderful youth-oriented programs like youth ambassadors and so on. But however, I've noticed that the age limit, the minimum age limit was rather high, like above 18 years old or 22 years old, and so on. But however, the impetus of me starting disarmament, activities for disarmament, was participating in this program when I was 15 years old. And I think that a student would have already decided the directions of their careers at the age of 18 in order to, enter college and decide their majors. I strongly believe that granting such educational opportunities at an early stage in one's life can outstandingly affect the student's mindsets and future decisions. Okay, so lastly, I'm going to focus on social media. So please take a look at these two tiny social media account screenshots. The account on the left has a blue check, and the account on the right doesn't have a blue check. the left one is the UNs, and the right one is the UN ODAs. But this little blue check is a mark that assures that this account is official. And you might think that this doesn't really matter, but this really does matter. I think just acquiring this little blue check will give a boost to the followers count. And so yeah, that's one little action that I thought may be really effective. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is hashtag campaigns. So there are multitude of hashtag campaigns out there, but only a tiny grasp among them manage to succeed. And I think what makes the difference is the specificness and effectiveness of the action. Like for instance, making infographics and putting a hashtag on it is really difficult, but perhaps signing an online petition may be a lot more easier. So my proposal would be to make actions attached to these hashtag campaigns more specific and easier to participate. So those were my 3 proposals. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Actually, coincidentally, those 2 speakers are high school students. So, there's the youngest in this group. And emphasizing importance of SNS. That's kind of generational change, isn't it? So, Yuriko?
Okay, my name is Yuriko, and my proposal is a broad one, but it's to utilize the technological networks created in this COVID-19 crisis. So wars undermine the SDGs, and disarmament is a necessary step in achieving the 17 goals, because with less weapons, there will be less wars, which could lead to, say, number 1, no poverty, number 11, more sustainable communities, and number 16, peace. But I think the question is how we can achieve this during this crisis where each country is so focused on themselves. And my answer is to shed light on the positive aspects of this crisis, because so many people focus on the negative aspects. The COVID-19 crisis has substantially enhanced technological networks and the ability of connection. Like right now, this event is being live streamed through Zoom and connecting many of us. And speaking in terms of my personal experience, I took classes online from my university, as many university students did. And I was also able to have a meeting with the professor who was in the United States. And through such experiences, I've come to realize the significance of technology and how it can link us like never before. This enhanced connectivity is key in achieving the disarmament and the SDGs, because violence can't be met with violence. In order for there to be less wars and weapons, we need to start grassroots movements. And these movements are powered by connectedness. Now, you might think, what do I mean by grassroots movements? I mean, like registering to online global events like this one and speaking up about the necessity of disarmament. I mean, taking part in online courses or seminars, which are widely available today, and hearing other people's opinions on the SDGs. And the governments of nations, they withdraw from global collectiveness like the USA did, but that doesn't mean that cooperation towards SDGs is impossible. That's because our voices as civilians, as individuals of our own countries, are much more real and profound and sincere than that of the people at the top. So we should use that voice. We should use that voice and reach out to other people just like us and convey the message that just like boasting about having the biggest army in the world or pointing guns to innocent civilians because we think they're terrorists is actually hindering peace and the path towards the SDGs. And by doing so, we can encourage all new spurts of actions. So I'm no expert in disarmament, nor am I an expert on technology, but and some of you might have found my presentation to be stating the obvious, but I realized through this crisis that I can make my voice heard through technology much more efficiently than before. And so we should seize this opportunity and of connectedness, and which empowers each and every one of us, and declare that one weapon less means one step closer to achieving the SDGs. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. It's very interesting. And I think, you know, since you guys are in the young generation, you have many experiences with the technology and social networks. If you could share some thoughts, that would be great. And also, you know, I would like to kind of remind you that the emerging technologies are very important, but I think we still have in an underexplored situation how we are going to utilize them, particularly in the civil society sector, right? So, you know, I hope that you could think of that. And Mary, you raise a hand.
So listening to you three ladies give your comments, I got really excited. Like, I think the three of you got together, you could create some insane change. We could make like #disarmament happen. So I'm saying we have this room full of incredible young people here. I mean, we should all connect on social media. We should all be sharing each other's projects. We should all be bolstering each other's voices. And what Amy was talking about, that intersectionality, Black Lives Matter, Greta, all of these people have been sharing their message using social media, creating this movement. And later today, I think some of us will be in attendance, but there will be an ICANN Academy meeting here as well, where 31 or 32 young people from all around the world, just like us, will be meeting to talk about these same issues. So today on August 6th, there are so many young people here talking about this. There's this energy. And so I'm really hoping that maybe after this, we can continue to connect and continue to, again, support each other. And maybe this can be the beginning of something really exciting, you know, with all of us and maybe beyond us. So thank you so much. I got so much energy from your comments.
Thank you. So Kento.
Yeah, so yeah, this time mic is on, so right. So as Izumi mentioned earlier, I think like in addressing disarmament and SDGs, I think actions have to be from bottom up, and we need to start from downstream interventions in the first place. And I think it really boils down to like combining all of what we said now. So first of all, as I briefly mentioned, like internalization, like, you know, get to know about like the people that are suffering from all those issues around the world. And because if something happens in the world, if they like have personal connection or attachment to those issues, then they actually really care about them personally. And then to be educated with the actual issues themselves. So it could involve, for example, use of digital technology, as Mary briefly mentioned with the example of Explore Hiroshima, for example. Yeah, I think it really is also effective in addressing the problem of gap in terms of agency, in terms of like the access of information to such issues worldwide. And for example, we could also utilize the voices of hibakusha, as a lot of us mentioned before. And then also we could, for example, like post some funny contents on social media so that so as to like get attention of as many people as possible around the world. And as Kano mentioned, like combining volunteer organizations and utilize it as like a united force to address those issues. And then if we can do all of this simultaneously across the globe, then I'm sure that like there's going to be a huge sort of intercontinental and multilateral activism going on, and then there's going to be definitely a positive result in terms of disarmament, SDGs, and other critical global issues. So yeah.
Thank you. Anyone?
Excuse me.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I also got really excited like listening to our three ladies who had really amazing ideas. And what was really interesting was that I think before we had a comment from Canon who said that the internet could be a very bad force because it's the more time people spend on SNS, the more time they're not actually talking face to face with real people in real life. And then later we had wonderful talks in which our wonderful speakers pointed out that SNS is actually a powering tool that can connect people and be a platform. So I was thinking these two statements seem to actually contradict each other, and then that really leads me to the next point of there's a really interesting TED Talk on the internet by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who is a Hollywood actor. You might have seen him in Inception. He gives a really good talk on how to use SNS effectively. He says that using SNS to try to get attention, like, oh, I want so many followers, I want people to like my silly, or not maybe silly, but like my photos. Getting attention is not very productive, he says, and actually trying not to get attention, but to pay attention to things using SNS or any other tool is productive, he says. And I agree, because if you're trying to get attention from people for just the sake of it, then that's not going to be very productive. But if you try to pay attention, for example, like what Mary said, let's try to build a platform when we can start discussing these things, create hashtags to raise awareness of the importance of nuclear disarmament on SNS, then SNS becomes a productive tool, because we're not, well, yes, we are trying to get attention, but we're paying attention to a problem. So I think it's like the way we use the platforms SNS that matters. And so technology can be, it's a double-edged sword as always. So that was the one point I wanted to say. And the other point is that we're talking about a brighter future. And if you actually look at economics, there's a thing called the environmental Kuznets curve, which predicts that, as industrialization progresses, the amount of environmental pollution should go up and then should go down in a U-curve. As industrialization progresses, we should get better at using renewable energy resources that are good for the environment, clean. And we should, so I think right now we're at that very top, at zenith. We're doing very bad things to the environment. We have bombs that could kill everyone in an instant. And now is the time to actually start going down that Kuznets curve. And if we don't do that, then our civilization is doomed. And as far as we know, we humans are the only creatures who've ever created weapons that could destroy the life forms on this planet. So it's kind of, I think we are the exception. And we are just, I think we are a very weird species. So I think we need to start conforming to what life is on this planet. And maybe, Okay, so.
Okay. Thank you, Kaya. And also let me share one episode which I learned recently. NHK Hiroshima Station now have a very interesting project. Are you aware of that? On the internet, Twitter, in fact, they use 2 diaries of the people who lived in the 1945 August, and then they sort of tweet. They have a tweet by those people if they have a Twitter on that time, what to tweeted, right? And then I sort of follow these accounts and find it really interesting. And, so if you have a chance, please take a look at on Twitter and then find it. But anyway, yes, Gen.
I'm Gen Hidari from the Campaign to Stop Killer Robots. And I would just like to agree on the proposals on using social media to raise more awareness on disarmament, but I would just like to second the proposal on lowering the age limit of participation. I definitely agree that even younger students below 18 can contribute a lot to the disarmament conversation. Actually, 3 days ago, I had a conversation on killer robots among the youth, and actually there were 16 years old participants, 3 of them who joined the conversation and actually prepared in advance to be part of the conversation. I think it's really important. I think it's really important to realize that they are capable of joining, but not just capable of joining, but also we need to involve them early, as conversations on disarmament and things that could happen in the future could, it's always better to educate the younger generation in advance. And I think the millennials and the Gen X are very much prepared to be part of this conversation.
Thank you. So now, Izumi and Hide, maybe a few words.
All right, I agree with you about lowering the age. Actually, I have tried that before. I have met some resistance from certain UN officials. I will try again. I think, I mean, I learn a lot from you guys. I mean, there are things that I just don't even understand when it comes to technology related. So I think you have certainly things that you can contribute. So, so I have taken note of this, and I will bring it back, and I will report back, and I will try again. I want to also respond to this double-edged sword nature of technology. You know, it's absolutely true that we have discovered how this connectivity has basically transformed how we are able to connect with each other and do things. Thanks to technology, we have been able to work, being educated, etc. But at the same time, during the COVID-19 crisis, I mean, just in the month of March alone, I understand that there are more than 300,000 suspicious websites created related to COVID-19. There have been so many cyber attacks on research institutions, health institutions. And of course, if you are in Killer Robot, Stop Killer Robot campaign, you know that some of those technologies are about to be also misused and weaponized. So I would like you to be fully aware of the dark side of the technology, and I will be counting on you to stop. You will be critical force to making sure that the impact of technology will be to enhance and benefit the humankind activities, not the other way around. You have to be able to minimize the negative impact of new technologies. And that is actually also part of the disarmament efforts. I increasingly spend a lot of time on those issues, including AI laws, but also cybersecurity discussions.
Thank you, Hide.
Well, I actually want to make a proposal to Izumi from the discussion we just had. You know, digital technology is relatively inexpensive, and there are resources already in the UN, like education materials, like Kanon was mentioning, there are various materials provided by the UN organizations. Using this, you know, young people might be able to, you know, using the digital technology, easier to use, better penetration to young people, and using this education platform, you know, have better learning for youth, and also use social media platform, create a social media platform by those people. I mean, they can volunteer to make a social media platform to discuss or to exchange views and develop ideas or policies. So using these two platforms, education and in exchanges or communication platform, and all those are created and like run by voluntary youth. And that's going to be very, inexpensive and could be influential. And I think there are many young people who would be willing and have a passion to make it better and work better. So please take it back.
Thank you, Governor. So the final part of our discussion is about bridging disarmament with other social and economic agenda, and particularly we focus on inequality and gender issues. So again, Phoebe and Hannah, there you lead off. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I am speaking on behalf of the Campaign to Stop Killer Robots, the international coalition of 165 non-governmental organizations in 65 countries formed 8 years ago to preemptively ban fully autonomous weapons, also known as killer robots. As we commemorate the 75th anniversary of the atomic bombing of Hiroshima, the campaign pays its tribute to the hundreds and thousands of lives destroyed due to the use of nuclear weapons, and at the same time renew our commitment to our own disarmament efforts in preventing the development and use of fully autonomous weapons before such weapons could be used to cause another human suffering and environmental harm like the one here in Hiroshima. In my proposal to the forum today, I will focus on the United Nations Secretary-General António Guterres' disarmament agenda on disarmament for future generation, specifically on his call for a ban on lethal autonomous weapons. I will elaborate on how disarmament education and ensuring equal participation of women will help the achievement of sustainable development goals. As a campaigner for the campaign to stop killer robots here in Japan, I have chosen these 2 SDGs shown in the slide based on my observations from my outreach activities towards both high school and university student groups in Tokyo, Japan. First of all, in regard to disarmament education, while actions are already being taken to include the younger generation in various disarmament programs, I believe that we should also take preventative measures to protect universities from military collaboration on research and development of technologies related to weapons of mass destruction, prohibited weapons such as landmines and cluster munitions, and also development of fully autonomous weapons. According to the report published by PAX this year, February, there is an increasing trend of military funding into academic research and development all over the world. Even in Japan, grants to universities for defense-related research jumped from 300 million yen in 2015 to 11 billion yen in 2017. Furthermore, 2015 also marks the first time since World War II that direct research funding was provided to universities from the Ministry of Defense. While collaboration with military sector is not necessarily problematic in itself, given the dual-use nature of emerging technologies such as the one mentioned by Izumi a while ago, such as artificial intelligence and robotics, universities should adopt ethics guidelines and establish ethics committees within the universities to ensure that their research is not used for any of the weapons that were mentioned before. At the same time, university students and staff must also be educated on dual-use technology to ensure that they are not contributing to the development of problematic technologies unknowingly or unintentionally. I propose that the Japanese government take leadership in this initiative as one, it has already signed itself as the champion of Action 38 of the disarmament agenda, establish a platform for youth engagement. And 2, the government has previously publicly stated that it has no plans to develop fully autonomous weapons. And 3, some universities in Japan already have ethics guidelines that the government could show as a model guideline for other countries that are heavily contributing to the development of these weapons. In addition, I would also urge the Japanese government to cooperate with other like-minded countries to lead an initiative to prohibit fully autonomous weapons, as such a treaty has been championed by the United Nations Secretary-General. Secondly, regarding the equal participation of women in various disarmament efforts, while there is already great female leadership in civil society organizations such as ICBL, ICANN, and our campaign, I believe that more outreach should be conducted to young women-led organizations in Japan to galvanize their support in various disarmament efforts. I believe that one way to gather their support is to conduct outreach on how attributes of being a woman affect exposures to risks and likelihood of becoming a victim of violence and conflict. One of the reasons why fully autonomous weapons should be prohibited is because big data and programming would reflect the biases and stereotypes of our patriarchal society today, and this would expose women to increased risks and violence in the future. In order to prevent this from happening, it is imperative that we include young women groups not only to inform our disarmament efforts with a female perspective, but to also secure gender equality in the long run. In closing, these proposals on protecting our universities, educating the youth, and galvanizing the support of young women, I believe we could spur more activities and momentum in achieving the SDGs through the disarmament agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It seems that, the ethics of science and technology getting increasingly difficult issue as, the benefits of technology both in military and the civil use are getting bigger and bigger. So that's a very important agenda. So now, Phoebe, can you hear me? It's your turn. Thanks for waiting.
Yes, so can everybody hear me? Okay, so
Yes.
my name is Phoebe. I am a current Soka University International Peace Studies student, and I'm in Tokyo right now. So I'm just gonna read what I have written, and then I'll go through, what does it mean by ecologically literate. So Mahatma Gandhi said, quote, "The true measure of any society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable members," unquote. To live in lasting peace, the most important implementation is structural transformation on a global level, and this requires the active action of dismantling injustice for all, and to building towards inclusion and the respect for diversity of life. The global citizenship perspective thus proposed that the adoption of a universal identity as citizens of the planet cultivates respect for oneself and the respect for other communities for their rights to exist. Yet to begin the building towards the culture of lasting peace that necessitates the absolute abolishment of the most obvious aggressor, nuclear weapons. Global governments must use this time of pandemic to reflect upon what are their roles of existing within their communities. Is it to justify war by continuing to invest resources on cultures of violence, or to stand by the collective dignity of life and invest our precious resources towards investments of youth and marginalized and neglected people to become resilient leaders for peace? State decisions to invest in weaponry contradicts with their promises during elections to the protection and safety of mankind. The delusion of power and influence through greed, dominance, and ownership is a clear indicator of foolishness and lack of awareness to the fundamental interconnection and interdependence of all life. Humanity at our best ought to share our planet and its resources, not exploiting it. And to create that better world, we must overcome our fears of each other and to commit in cultivating genuine and long-lasting friendships. To do so, actions of integration, fostering of cultural development for peace, nonviolence communication strategies must become training grounds for altruistic leaderships for national leaders. Education geared towards fostering of ecologically literacy and the encouragement of systems thinking approach mentality must be implemented in our global education systems. It is my conviction that through eco-literacy, systems thinking approach, nonviolence communication, and an adoption of slow school education pedagogy, we can empower ordinary people to reimagine the current global financial systems, political leadership systems, and social service systems. Going into community or true online advocacy, we can rekindle our human need for nature and the appreciation for our home. Thus, it is my belief that by helping to guide nuclear power nations to voluntarily re-evaluate and to limit their freedom of actions, that they can rekindle their gratitude for our planet and their immediate communities, and thus a smoother transition to sustainable systems. So basically my point is that I believe the 21st century is the age of obeying the laws of interdependence and interconnections. Kind of echoing what Kaya said about saying that humans are a really strange species. I think it's because there's a gap in our knowledge because our global education systems do not teach us to be more aware of a planetary awareness. So I think through proper education and helping them to raise their awareness, they can become leaders who are much more aware and much more sensitive other than ego, but to life. So my mantra is less ego, more eco. So this is what I believe. And so I started Climate Action Soka at Soka University, one of the founding members, and I started with a bunch of students really to raise the awareness on things such as plastic uses and just to let them become empowered to know you can start small, but your small action has a very big impact because we're on one planet. So we're in oneness and we're in wholeness. The second aspect is I'm a participating member of Nuclear Disarmament Board at Soka University. It was started in May by the current existing students. And we actually wrote a petition for the United Nations. And it's quite strange that I was actually selected. So I really hope that I can give this petition to Izumi for her to evaluate. And basically the intention was to educate people to raise awareness on what is the ecology of nuclear weapons? How is it produced? How does it affect? Let them know that this whole thing has a system. And so in order to first see that there is a system and that it's unsustainable and it leads to, basically eco-suicide, that they can learn to walk away and walk towards the direction of peace. So they will voluntarily assume that role to limit their freedom of actions. So this is what I have for so far. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so and at the very last, Hannah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, my name is Hanako, and I'm a third-year university student at Keio University, and I currently study and research the SDGs at my lab. I know my proposal slide is kind of complicated, so I would like to break it down into 2 steps. So I personally think that in order to promote the disarmament of weapons and to realize the achievement of the SDGs at the same time, my proposal is to first establish discussions as to why these weapons accumulate in the first place, and on the other hand, why opposers believe they should be abolished. The key to these discussions would be to have as many perspectives as possible. I personally value diversity and believe that people with different backgrounds, such as nationalities, religious beliefs, socioeconomic upbringings, ethnicities, genders, and different native first languages would give valuable perspectives on this particular subject from different points of view. Also, what would be valuable to hear is expertise from scientists, researchers, or policy experts in this area, again, from different parts of the world. The second step in my proposal would be to help reduce political corruption and socioeconomic disparity by improving communities. The Center of Strategic and International Affairs released a report in 2018 about the stability in the Middle Eastern and North African regions, where military spending has risen and extremism is still a threat in many countries. A study conducted in 2016, interviewing 3,500 Arab youth, showed that a quarter of them, or about 24%, believed that lack of jobs and opportunities for young people was the top reason why young Arabs would join extremist groups such as Daesh. In 8 out of 16 countries, youth unemployment or lack of jobs is considered to be the top reason for temptation into extremist recruitment. In addition, out of the 16 countries polled, 44%, or fewer than half, agreed that there were any good job opportunities in the areas they lived in. That means that 56% believe there are no good job opportunities in the areas they lived in. Job opportunities remain a major issue across the Arab world, with 1 in 4 14 to 24-year-olds unemployed, the highest rate in the world, according to the World Bank. This can also be related to the recruitment of youth and drug cartels, for example, in Central or Latin America. When people cannot find a purpose and don't have adequate access to education or job training in their youth, they will try to find a calling. For many of them who need income to survive and to make a living, terrorist or illegal groups become their only hope. Some people, on the other hand, use weapons to make them feel safe. We could think about the number of Americans choosing to keep a gun in their car or house. This is because they often don't feel safe in their house without it. In order to reduce weapons, we need to get to the root cause of the problem and reduce socioeconomic inequality, improve communities, and help people feel safer on a daily basis with the hopes of creating a healthier livelihood for people in their community. Therefore, these steps would help to realize SDGs such as goal number 11, which highlights making cities and human settlements safe, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable, no matter what your background, ethnicity, or religious affiliation is. It would also help to realize goals such as number 4 or 8 if we improve access to education for the youth from the get-go, and therefore allow more positive outcomes in the workforce. Discussions to reduce misunderstandings and gain perspectives from valuable people creates peace and promotes partnership, helping to realize goals number 16 and 17, while creating more transparent, inclusive, and robust institutions. It would also help to promote diversity and reduce inequalities in those able to participate in policy and decision-making, which attributes to realizing goal number 10. Yeah, so for the sake of time, I'll cut my explanation here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All raise very important issues, and particularly, I think recently we are so much concerned about diversity and also the equity and equality in discussing the security issues. So now, I'm afraid we are running out of time. So let me suggest, if you have comments, and please raise your hand and have a very quick remarks. Then afterward, I ask 2 senior people, Governor and the Secretary General, to conclude the entire session. So anybody? Yes, Satoshi.
Thank you for everyone's wonderful speeches. I think in closing, in my personal closing, I think the important thing across all this theme is the getting out of the bubble. I myself do not recognize myself as an activist personality and has not a personal connection to Hiroshima. My parents or grandparents didn't live in this country when in 1945. I didn't live in Hiroshima, but I think the beauty of this place is that the story of these hibakusha really appeals to me on a humanitarian level, regardless of ideology or nationality. So I think with that, I think when campaigning or pursuing this disarmament, I think even whether or not you're in activist or policymaker or lawyers, I think you need to be aware of the story that you're sharing and the ways of thinking that you're implicitly exhibiting, and you need to, I think myself included, get out of the bubble and talk with people who doesn't necessarily agree with you, even if the fundamental set of goal, whether or not the nuclear weapons should be abolished or how it should be abolished and what's the role of the nation of civil society. So I think this is the takeaway for myself from this event. I think I'm looking forward to hearing everyone's the journey from this event, and I think I myself will want to work harder towards the nuclear disarmament. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yes, Ankita.
So thank you. Lately, I was discussing with a friend of mine, and we just had this discussion that it's not just Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but actually across Japan, the sensitization can be, spread. How? By actually giving the today's the world of 5D, 3D, 4D, 5D. So giving them giving people the idea that what had happened, through the virtual tour, probably, making that kind of museums, which has real sensitization in terms of, wearing 3D glasses and experiencing a little bit of heat and, what sound, that what exactly had happened on that very day. So I feel that certain sensitization at every level has to happen, starting from school levels for the tourists who are coming here. So when I went to Nagasaki, I was sensitized because I saw everywhere there were boards that talked about what had happened, how far is the epicenter from this place. So I feel that sensitization is very, very important.
Thank you. Yes. Kaya? Is that?
Okay, so yeah, to just recall this fact, but thinking about Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it's also important, I think, to remember that Hiroshima and Nagasaki were not the only victims of nuclear bombs, because lots of nuclear bombs were dropped in the Marshall Islands in the Pacific, in the South Pacific, and in Kazakhstan by the Soviet government as tests by the government. I think the US military dropped a lot of atomic bombs in the Pacific to test their nuclear weapons, and the Soviets did the same in Central Asia, and lots of local people became hibakushas. They are nuclear bomb victims as well. They suffered from cancers and other radiation-related diseases. Many of them also died, but they don't get much media attention because the military and the governments don't want people to know about it. So although Hiroshima and Nagasaki are symbolic, very symbolic, at the same time, I think we need to be aware that atomic bomb survivors are global. They're everywhere in many countries, not just Japan, including Japan. And we need to be vocal for their rights as well.
Thank you very much. I think, I'm afraid we have to finish the session. So now I would like to ask Izumi for your final words, and also some comments on this diversity and inequality issues.
Yeah, let me start with that then. Diversity. Good decisions are made with diverse perspectives. If those decisions are made only amongst the same kind of people, you do not benefit from various perspectives, and therefore the quality of decisions actually always go down. And that's why we stress the importance of diversity. Diversity at the UN, of course, means a lot of different nationalities, geographical balance, etc. But increasingly, women, at the decision-making table, there we don't talk about 30%, it's parity. And the Secretary General always reminds us, parity means 50%, not 30%. I really hope that this is understood in Japan. Of course, it's the right thing to do, but diversity increases the quality of decisions that we are making, and that's why we need to have that diversity. And so please try to spread this word. It's for all of us. It's not just for women, it's for all of us to have diversity. Now, my closing word, I think I also have to do a little bit of advertisement for UN ODA. We are now really prioritizing youth engagement. You have seen disarmament agenda of the Secretary General. He called all of you ultimate force for change. And so we are really serious about creating more platforms and opportunities for you to engage and actually help us make advances in disarmament efforts. It's only the beginning. We are starting a lot of new things. I mean, we've always done disarmament education, but we are definitely expanding the horizon. There are a lot of new means of education using the digital technologies. I'm really impressed by the ideas that you all gave me today. I will bring them up and bring them back. And if you have any further ideas, please send me. But this is only the beginning. There is also a new project, Youth Champion for Disarmament, very competitive. We just did a selection of the first 10 group of 10 people, young people. I hope to be able to continue this on a regular basis. So we are, definitely committed to continuing and increasing opportunities for younger people to engage and contribute. We don't do this for lip service. We are looking for actual new ideas because we need to revitalize, re-energize disarmament. It's been in stalemate for far too long. Actually, I should say, I've shared this story. I didn't ask to be on this position. Someone said that I'm not you're not an expert on disarmament. I'm not. I started in refugee world. I did many different things in the UN community, but the Secretary General said that you don't need to be a specialist expert in the beginning. You can learn. And I think what he really meant is that disarmament needs shake-up. The mandate that he gave me was shake it up. So I would like you to shake it up, give us new ideas, new energy, because we need to revitalize and re-energize this field. Thank you. Keep it up.
Thank you very much. So, Governor.
Well, a little bit on diversity. Having diverse background people is really important. But also I'd like to emphasize the importance of having a diversity in yourself too. You want to experience many different things and acquire different perspectives. And that will give you, I think, a lot of growth and to be more effective, it's very useful. And also, the diversity or importance of diversity is represented by, Izumi-san, like non-experts going into the responsible position of disarmament. This, really important. We can't just let the only experts discuss disarmament. And the same thing applies to other topics and other areas of issues too. So in this regard, diversity is very important. And you know, another message I wanted to say is take actions, keep taking actions. You know, butterfly effects. You know, one stroke of butterfly in Beijing creates the storm in New York. But also, I talk about power, and maybe you might think just one individual might be powerless, but if you don't take actions, that really makes you powerless. If you think of really good ideas, really good things, but take no actions, and that's not going to change the world. But if you take actions, you know, even you might think, you know, you're small and powerless, but that will create small ripple and will be will be having effects on other people, and that will increase, and then that will lead to butterfly effects. So please keep taking actions, and that you know, and then the world will really change. So thank you very much for, well, so participating this session is one of your actions. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes, action is important. And also, I would like to remind you that maybe you want to keep on talking what you will do rather than what you want to ask other people to do. And I think that's a very important step. And also, you know, if you have a really good idea, you know, we should take Izumi's words as it is. So you tell her, you know, I want to do this, so please help. You know, UN should help us, and you know, I can help UN to do this, right? So I actually look forward the next round of this kind of discussion. And my apology for mismanagement, and it's already like 40 minutes past 3. But I believe that everybody enjoyed the discussion, and thank you very much for your active contribution. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Akiyama, for an amazing moderating work. And I'd like to extend a special thanks to Izumi NAKAMITSU, Under Secretary General, for giving us a lot of powerful, convincing comments. So could you please give her a little warm hand? Thank you so much. Thank you very much. And we sincerely hope that all of you will utilize the results of today's dialogue in your future activities for realizing a peaceful, sustainable society. And before closing this event, one more thing, we would like to ask your cooperation regarding the questionnaire we sent earlier when we sent the guidance on how to view the event. And yes, this concludes UN75 in Hiroshima. Thank you very much once again for joining this event and sharing many wonderful ideas with us. And please don't forget, to spread your posts on SNS with hashtag UN75 and hashtag Hiroshima75. And I'm Rumi Burgle. Have a great day. Thank you so much.
Oh no, we cannot hear.
And it was very encouraging to see so many young people with, the good ideas. And that was a treasure arising from the ruin of Hiroshima. So that's maybe heritage from the victims of Hiroshima. So that's a message from our audience.